So what are you going to declare? What choices are you going to make, and what are you going to declare for your future so that it will manifest sometime in your future?
Make sure you say that it's both positive or negative.
Both positive or negative. And so, for instance, if you keep saying, so once upon a time I had a wife that my first wife that I had, she used to say that well, it's just me. And she would knock on the door or do, she would do something, and then she'd say, well, it's just me. And I told her that I don't like the way she's saying that. It's not just her. She is a very important part of my life, and I want her to start recognizing that and saying it that way. And so she became different. And so she became my better wife. It's still the same person, but it's not the same person anymore. Does that make sense? Like it's Elsie, but she's different than she used to be. And there was one time she was beating herself up with her words. And I told her that I am not okay with the way she's talking about my wife. That she does not have the right to talk about my wife like that. And she quit it. She doesn't do that anymore. She has not done it in a pretty long time. And so it changed her life and my life. Just us deciding to talk different, to say things the way we want them to be, instead of beating ourselves up or putting ourselves down. So, one interesting thing that my wife and I used to do soon after we were married is we would scare each other. And we would try to even like one-up each other, right? And so we would, like, maybe I was hiding behind the doorway, and she would come through the doorway and be like, boo, and wah! Oh, ha, 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 that was so funny. And then I would come through the doorway and she'd jump out at me, and it wasn't so funny. But she thought it was. But anyway, we were having a lot of what we call fun with that. But it got to the point where we were just almost, we could feel ourselves not trusting each other anymore. And you didn't know when you go through a doorway what's going to jump out at you and things like that. And we decided, you know what, that's not what we want for our future. We don't want to be to where we're not trusting each other and where we're always like not sure what's going to happen next. And so we agreed together that we're not going to do it anymore. And then we forgot a few times and still did it a few times, but we stopped doing that. And now there's been a few times over the last 5 years or so that we scared each other, but not intentionally. And when we did, we apologized for it. So, but that is a choice that we made for our future. What choices are you making for your future? What choices are you the type of person that wants to be known as an honest person? Who wants to be known as an honest person? So are you being honest now? Are you honest? Or do you lie and laugh about it and say, I was just kidding? Do your words actually matter? Do you say what you mean and mean what you say? Or do you just kid around and then can't figure out why people don't take you serious when you actually are serious? How are people supposed to know when you're serious or not if you're sometimes lying and sometimes you're serious? So I remember we were visiting a church, and over, it was a church, but it was like a conference, and different people were getting up to speak, and over these people would get up. The person would get up to speak, and they would start out by saying a whole bunch of lies. It would say some kind of story that was completely false. And at the end of the story, they would laugh, and, it was supposed to be like an icebreaker, but it was a false story. And I'm struggling with it. Like, how am I supposed to now take this person serious who just got done lying to me, and now he wants to teach me something? I'm supposed to now take that part serious. And so different things like that along the way makes you think about, so what do I want to do? How do I want to operate? And then you start making some decisions in your life of how you're going to operate. And in some of those places you fail, and some of the places you do better in. But along the way, we will keep adjusting. My question is, when you adjust, are you adjusting to something better, or are you adjusting to something worse? Because you're not going to keep from adjusting. That's going to automatically happen as you go through life. But you have the choice when that adjustment happens. Are you going to adjust to something a little bit better, or are you going to adjust to something a little bit worse? Are you going to get to the point where, hey, I want to be better than that? Or you're going to get to the point where you're like, well, it doesn't matter anyway, and you just start making worse and worse choices. That's the thing that happens in life. So what are you going to do? What are you going to do? What are you going to do as you go through this journey of life, of decisions that are in front of you? Are you going to face the hard? Or are you going to avoid the hard? Are you going to speak the truth? Or are you okay with putting some lies in there and it doesn't really matter? Or even, like, there's some people that believe that if they make the lie big enough, it's not really a lie because everybody knows it's not the truth. But that's not how I believe. I believe if you make the lie big enough, it's just a bigger lie. It doesn't suddenly make it okay if you make the lie big enough. In fact, I've been laughed at over the years with people that made a big, tall story that I thought they were serious, and I took it as truth. And people laughed at me for believing that could have been the truth. But my desire is to believe people until I can't. That's my desire. I want to believe people until I can't. Some of you don't want to believe people until you can. Are you the type of person that does not want to believe people until you can? Or are you the type of person that wants to believe people until you can't? Do you see the difference there? If people sense that you trust them, you're probably going to have a head start. If people sense that you don't trust them and you're testing them out, what tends to happen is you start kicking into their insecurity, and then your insecurity comes up, and then your discernment is something's off, which is true, something is off, but it's that insecurity that's off. And then they feel like you don't trust them, and so they don't trust you, and you have like a disadvantage where if you would trust them in the beginning, they would probably trust you automatically right away too. That makes sense?
Yeah.
Your discernment can be fairly accurate. Your discernment can come from the Holy Spirit. Your discernment can come from your past experiences. And so don't just go by everything you feel and sense and things like that. but don't ignore that either. But then sometimes it's good to say, okay, so I'm sensing this. What is it? Where is it coming from? Is it coming from some of my past, or is it coming from something in them and things like that? Okay? All right. Anyone else have something they want to share? Yeah. And so you have a vision for who you are and where you're going. And without a vision, the people perish. So if you don't have a vision of where you're going, you're dying. It's just you're dying inside if you don't have a vision. Part of where you're going can include that I am going to the gym, right? I'm going to go do some workouts. And the gym in God's kingdom is, he might say, well, I want you to go over there and talk to that person. That might be your spiritual muscles to build some muscles of your future. Yeah. And so whatever that next step is that he tells you to do, if you go out there and do that next step, you're building your muscles for your future. And then he shows you your next step and you go do that. And he shows you your next step and you start doing that. And as you keep taking the steps that are in front of you, it gets you ready for something. And after a bit, it's like, wow, I think you're ready for this. Right? And so let's say that you wanted to be staff. You want to sit up here with Galen and help teach this course. Well, there's some steps you have to take. I'm not going to say, okay, yep, you're on, come on up here and do it. There's some steps I'm going to take you through that you have to build up to be able to do that, right? So no matter what you're doing, if you're going to go play professional football, you're going to have to go through some intense training to do that, right? If you want to become a doctor, you're going to go through some intense training to become a doctor, right? Whatever your future is, it's going to require some kind of training. If you avoid all training, you're probably not going to get anywhere. If you embrace training, you see that as a part of the journey, then you'll be grateful for whatever you're going through. And if you know that all things work together for good, for those who love God and are called according to his purposes, then whatever you're going through, you're going to look for the good in it. What is good in this? What is good in this? What is good in this? And I remember 10, 12, 15 years ago going through some hard stuff and thinking, man, I wonder what could ever good come out of this. At the time, it didn't look like it was even possible for anything good to come out of it. But now, looking back at it, I can see good in it. So whatever you're going through, whatever you're going to go through, look for something good, or at least hold on to it that somehow this is going to be good. Maybe I can't see it now. Maybe I won't see it for the next 5 years. But I am believing that something good is coming out of this. If you can do that, you maintain that, and you walk through this on this journey with God, those steps become your next step, which becomes your next step, which becomes your next step. And all that time you're growing spiritually to where God can now use you for bigger things. And when he uses you for bigger things, then that tests your muscles again. But as you go through that, then you can be used for even bigger things. How many of you look up to somebody in your life that you recognize that they have some kind of a spiritual authority and some kind of a spiritual connection that you want? Are you willing to do the work to get there? Because you can get there, but you're going to have to face some things to get there. You're going to have to make some decisions to get there. You're going to have to push through some stuff to get there, right? Tim was talking about how he had to push through some stuff this summer. And I'm on the other side here, looking at Tim, and there was a few times I looked at Tim and I said, Tim, I'm not jealous of where you're going. You're on a good journey. You're going to You're going to learn a lot from this. And I don't know of any way but through. Is that what I said? No other way but through. If you're going to run from it, it's going to hurt you. If you want to try and go around it or underneath it or shut down or any of that, it's just going to hurt you. And the best way is to go through. And he went through a miserable time. Now, I'm not stretching that, am I? He went through a miserable time. But you know what? When he got through, I think he can tell you now that he's glad he went through it. If he can't yet, he will be able to in a year or two. How close are we? Are we there yet where we can say, I'm glad I went through it? Yeah. Good. You're going to get to the place where you're glad you went through it if you go through. And through is the only way, in my opinion. You shy away from it, you pull back, you shut down, you get angry at it, frustrated, whatever. It just hurts you and hinders your journey. You step up there and face it and say, God, how do you want me to get through this? How am I going to face this? What do you want me to know? And you just keep right on up against that. Reminds me of of this person that God told him to go up, and there was this huge rock, and God said, go push against that rock. And the guy went out there and he pushed against it. And next day, God told him again, go push against that rock. The next day, again, a few days went by, and the guy said, the guy told God, I don't want to push against the rock. It's not moving. God said, I didn't tell you to move it. Sometimes we're focused on moving the rock when God is focused on building muscles by us pushing against the rock. Right? And so the situation in your life, you might not be able to move it. But God might still have you go up there and push against it. And push against it and push against it. And one day, maybe you have enough of muscles to move it, or one day maybe God gives you a different assignment and somebody else comes along and gives it a little push and there it goes. But the key here is through. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear not much evil. No evil, no evil. I will fear no evil. Why? Because you are with me. Your rod and your staff comfort me. Right? You ever think about that? His rod, you know what that rod looks like and that staff? That's a big stick. You ever see a shepherd's staff? They comfort you. You see God with a big stick. Does that stick comfort you or does that stick threaten you?
Well, if you know he's on your side, it doesn't.
Right. Because the stick is not for you. The stick is against the enemy. Right? If you think that stick is for you, you don't understand God yet. So yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me, your rod and your staff comfort me. And thou preparest a table before me in the presence of my enemies. What an idea. How many of you would like for God to make a table for you to eat with all your enemies around you? That's not quite the idea that I would have of a great place to eat, would you? Like, man, I'm going to go down there to that place down there where all my enemies are, and God has a table here for me to eat from. But that's God's plan. And a part of that, I believe, part of that plan is so that the enemies can see that God is making provision for you no matter what they do. You're able to sit down and have a meal with God, even with the enemy around. Because we would like to believe that if God really loved us, he would remove the enemies, right? You know, there's a scripture verse that says that when a man's ways please the Lord, he will make even his enemies to be at peace with him. So if you know who you are, and you start operating from there, and you start taking the steps that God shows you to take, it will start moving things. But it will also be a threat to the enemy. And the enemy might want to come and try to persuade you different. Hey, has God really said? Or do you really want to do really do that God thing? Do you really want to throw your life away by following God? That's the stuff the enemy tries to do. I mean, all your friends are over here sinning and having fun, and you have to do this God thing. Or do you get to? Do you want to? Do you want to do the God thing? Do you want your heart to be open to God and he lives in you and through you to where you're starting to make a difference in the world and things are changing and lining up and working? Or do you want that temporary fun? In other words, it's kind of this way. Do you want some temporary fun for some long-term problems? Or do you want to go through some temporary problems for some long-term success? Which one do you want? You're going to face problems one way or the other. Do you want them up front and face them and get through them, or do you want them to just follow you all your life? Up front and face them. Yeah. Because when you're up front and you face them, now they're no longer following you. You know your problems will follow you if you run from them, or if you try to ignore them, or you bury your head in the sand. You know what becomes obvious if you bury your head in the sand? Your butt. Right? I mean, there you are, you're with your head in the sand, your butt's sticking out right here, right? And so, and you wonder why you feel whooped. But if you turn that around and you start facing it, then the enemy starts being on the defensive. Right? And one thing that you'll learn, especially in sports, is you gain the points on the offense. The defense is to keep the other side from scoring. The offense is for your side to score. You know, you like baseball. You never make points by being in the outfield. Do you know that? You never make points by being in the outfield. You make points when it's your turn to be in the infield. And I believe it's the same way in God's kingdom. You don't make points in the outfield, you make points in the infield. So when you're in the infield, step up to bat and swing at it. And you know what? Do you know what's considered successful in a ball player's batting average? anything, 0.30 and higher, that means like 70% of the time he can strike out and still be successful. Can you see that you might strike out 70% of the time and still be considered successful in God's kingdom? And if you decide to not get up to bat because you don't want to strike out, you're not going to get your hits either. So what measurements are you using for success? What is your measurement for success in your life? What is your measurement for success in your wife's life? How do you measure her success? How do you measure your children's success? How do you measure the people around you? How do you measure their success? How do you measure your own success? I'll let you answer that. I want to hear what your answer is on that. How do you measure your success?